Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Marisa Matias, and I come from the Faculty of Psychology and Education at the University of Porto. Today, I'll be presenting an overview of parental leave policies in Portugal, with a particular focus on how their design may relate to some inequalities, namely related to gender inequalities. So let me start with a brief overview of the system. In Portugal, parental leave is structured around two major types of leave: the initial parental leave and the possibility of shared leave. There are also other forms, such as extended parental leave, adoption leave, etc., that I will cover very briefly today. So, at the core of our parental leave system, we have the initial parental leave. So this means that parents can choose 120 days or 150 days of leave. The difference between the two has to do with the payment that they received for this period. Mothers have 42 days mandatory right after the childbirth, and fathers also have a mandatory period of 28 days plus 7 optional days. The first 7 days of the father's leave must be taken immediately after the birth. The remaining days, the remaining 21 days and the remaining 7 optional days must be taken during the mother's mandatory 40 days period. The remaining period, up to 120 or 150 days, can be divided between the father and the mother or taken just by one of them according to their preference. If the mother uses 30 days before birth, this is also a possibility. This amount of time, these days that she uses, will be subtracted from the total of 120 and 150 days. So then this initial parental leave lasts at most 150 consecutive days. This means that it includes weekends, public holidays, etc. The other possibility in terms of leave is the shared parental leave. A parental leave is considered to be shared if during the remaining days after the mandatory periods, mothers and fathers each separately take at least one period of 30 consecutive days or 2 periods of 15 consecutive days. So if they do this, this will add 30 days to the normal leave period. And this was introduced in particular to increase the amount of sharing between the leaves and to also increase the amount of time that fathers would be with their children. So at most, we can have, combining these two types of leaves, 180 days of parental leave. Another possibility, but before that, there are also some important details in how this system works. For example, if parents take the leave at the same time, the days are counted double. So it means that if they use the leave simultaneously, instead of having 120 days, they will only use 60 consecutive days. This is very seldom the case. There's also additional time for multiple births and additional time for preterm births. Another possibility after the initial leave is the extended parental leave. This is again very seldomly used, but it is foreseen that each parent can take up to 3 additional months with lower compensation. And this is precisely why this type of leave is very seldom used, because the payment of this leave is around 30% of the former salary. And considering the low wages that we still have in the country, this is very rarely used. These 3 months of the extended parental leave, nonetheless, can be taken up to the child is 6 years of age. Other parental leaves available are related to part-time work. Also, there's an initial parental leave allowance for a parent when the other parent, for some reason, mental health or physical health incapacity or even death, is not able to take the leave. And there's also a modality of grandchild leave for grandparents who are working and one of the parents is under 16 years old. In terms of eligibility and in terms of access, the system is supposed to be relatively inclusive. To qualify to be able to get the leave, parents need to have a minimum contribution period to the Social Security, and benefits are paid individually and not dependent on the partner's income from work. So in principle, this is an universal system, though of course there are also some inequalities in access. What do we know about take-up rates? And here you can see on the red line that mothers' use is almost universal, and fathers' use has been increasing over time, especially due to the mandatory leave. And on the dark blue lines, you can see how the men compulsory parental leave uptake is being increased across time. And on the light blue line, you see the increase in the use of the optional parental leave. So even though this policy allows for sharing, we also see that the sharing is not fully realized in practice, since you can see in this dark gray line that fathers still is increasing. The tendency is that the uptake is increasing. But if we take, for example, the year of 2024, we can still see that for every 100 children that are born, approximately 97 women took the initial parental leave, and approximately 46 men shared that leave. Considering now some points about the recent changes and these key elements on the policy design, I would like to stress that over the last decades, there have been important reforms in our country in this regard. And in 2009, I would say it's a particularly significant one. In 2009, the changes in labor legislation shift the system from a mother centrality on leave policies to a core responsibility for this initial period of family formation. This was when the bonus month was first introduced, and it also framed parental leave as initial parental leave instead of calling it maternity or paternity leave, therefore aligning it with a gender equality framework. I would also like to stress a very recent change, which is still ongoing. But in January this year, a citizens' initiative was taken to the National Parliament requesting for an extension of the initial parental leave up to around 6 months, which includes 180 days. This proposal was approved by the majority of the National Parliament, but its implementation is still ongoing in terms of legislation. Now, what can we say about what are the elements that define the Portuguese system? I believe it is now evident that there is a trade-off between time and income, so more time relates to less income, and this is sometimes a very strong barrier to have more time in terms of parental leave. There's a strong emphasis on co-parenting and incentives for sharing the leave, because as you have seen, if both parents take at least 30 days of leave separately, the total leave will be extended. Dedicated father's time is also a key element on this framework, and in principle, it is an universal system. I say it in principle because, and now moving to the inequalities elements, as access depends on prior contributions to Social Security and to formal labor market participation. And in this regard, precarious workers, migrants, and even self-employed individuals may have less access to these conditions. Another source of potential inequality derives from the gender pay gap. As probably you are aware, this gender pay gap usually puts women at disadvantage. And so when families start making these considerations because of their wage difference, this can influence who is taking the leave, even the shared leave, so that they don't get so penalized in their incomes. Also, some data shows how organizational culture still discourages fathers from using their rights, in particular the optional part of their rights. And as you saw in this graph that I've showed, mothers' use of leave is universal, and there's still a disproportionate sharing. An important point that I would like to bring attention to is that even when the leave is shared, usually the father's bonus month is typically coupled with mother's vacation month. So the most common pattern of leave use in Portugal is that the mothers use the 120 or the 150 days, and then an additional month is dedicated for the fathers. But this additional month is usually coupled with the vacations that the mother is also entitled due to their job. Of course, this is a family arrangement. There's nothing in the policy or in the legislation that stresses this need, but this is usually how families end up doing their arrangements. So overall, Portugal can be seen as a relatively progressive system within our European context, particularly because of the focus on the father's exclusive time and also the focus on the co-responsabilization. But at the same time, there are important features that still reproduce some inequalities. The leave durations are short, the full sharing is limited, and father's individual time with a child remains limited. Being a psychologist, I cannot skip noticing how this is very important also for bonding with the child, that also the father has this individual time to the child to bring these bonds forward. So concluding, I would stress the need for stronger endorsements of fathers for their individual entitlements. These could be better made with better financial incentives, also with interventions at the organizational level to lower the barriers that some individuals have in uptaking their leaves. And of course, parental leave policies are more than family policies. They reveal how societies value care, and so this is an important point to stress. Here in the end, I leave some sources that I've used for this presentation. And I couldn't help finish this presentation without acknowledging the work of one of my students, Ana Abreu, who helped me collect some data for this presentation. Here you also have my email in case there is any questions, doubts, or remarks that you'd like to share. Thank you very much.